Breaking news. The truth behind Blake Lively's feud with It Ends With Us director Justin Baldoni has just shattered Hollywood's perfect illusion. Everything you thought you knew was wrong. For months, Blake played the victim, but a newly unsealed audio recording flips the entire story on its head. This isn't about harassment or retaliation. This is about power, manipulation, and control. And the secret recording that Blake never wanted anyone to hear. Because once you do, everything changes. The story begins long before the headlines, long before the lawsuits, and long before the internet turned the feud between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni into one of Hollywood's most talked about scandals. It starts in the summer of 2023, when the set of It Ends With Us was buzzing with pressure, expectations, and tension. Blake Lively had just signed on, not only as the lead actress, but as a creative force determined to shape the project in her own image. She was confident, charming, and precise about how the film should look and sound. Yet beneath that polished exterior, insiders whispered about growing friction between her and the studio Wayfarer, the production house led by Justin Baldoni. Blake had a vision, but Wayfarer had a structure. And in that clash, something dangerous began to build. It was not chaos. At first, it was silence. A quiet war between brand and art, between image and authenticity. According to court documents and internal emails, Blake wanted creative control over every frame from costume design to final edits. And when she realized she could not fully have it, she began reaching for something more powerful. The narrative, the ability to tell her own version of events before anyone else could. Insiders later revealed that Ryan Reynolds, her husband, drafted a public statement demanding Wayfarer apologize for the film's rocky rollout. The statement sounded noble, even humble. But to those who saw behind the curtain, it was an ultimatum, a carefully crafted move to seize control of the headlines. Wayfarer refused to publish it, and that refusal marked the point of no return. According to producers who later testified, that was the moment Blake turned from collaborator to strategist. She understood the game. She knew the value of public sympathy, and she began preparing for a story no one could question, because it came from her soon after anonymous stories started appearing in entertainment outlets claiming the set was toxic, that Justin Baldoni had lost control, that Blake was being mistreated. These whispers spread like wildfire, painting a picture of a hostile workplace. But when journalists started to dig deeper, they found inconsistencies, timelines that didn't fit, and a strange lack of evidence. But by then, the damage was done. The public had already chosen sides, and most sided with Blake, because that was the narrative she fed them. It was a masterclass in perception management. She didn't have to prove she was right. She just had to make everyone else doubt who was wrong. As weeks passed, the tension grew. Insiders described Blake as becoming increasingly isolated, guarded, and defensive. She stopped doing joint interviews with Justin, avoided press appearances where they might cross paths, and focused entirely on promoting her own brand rather than the film's deeper message about survival and healing. This shift didn't go unnoticed. Fans began questioning her tone, and critics started wondering why the film's emotional core had been buried under fashion campaigns and product placements. Still, Blake stood firm, publicly, smiling privately. Fuming, according to internal correspondence later revealed in court, she told a confidant that if Wayfarer wouldn't protect her image, she would do it herself, no matter the cost, and that cost was coming sooner than anyone realized. Weeks later, she filed a legal complaint, claiming she had been targeted by harassment and retaliation. Suddenly, the tension wasn't just creative, it was criminal. The media exploded. Justin Baldoni, the man known for empathy and emotional storytelling, was now facing allegations that struck at the heart of his reputation. But even as the headlines spread Wayfarer and Justin stayed silent, they didn't attack, they didn't counter. They waited because they knew something that the public didn't. The audio recording at the center of Blake's claim wasn't what she said. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't intimidation. It was frustration, a moment of venting between executives about the storm that had erupted around her. And when that truth finally surfaced, it changed everything. Yet in those early days, no one knew that all they saw was a star claiming to be silenced, a studio accused of cruelty, and a director caught in the crossfire. What they couldn't see was the machinery of influence spinning beneath it all. A machinery that Blake herself had set in motion with precision planning and quiet determination. She wasn't just reacting. She was directing the story like a script, and the world was her audience. As the lawsuit gained traction, the world began to treat Blake Lively as a symbol of bravery and resilience. The headlines were sympathetic. The interviews were emotional. and every post she made carried the tone of a woman fighting against injustice. But behind that carefully polished exterior, the truth was unraveling in silence because somewhere buried deep within court filings, emails, and audio recordings was a story that did not align with her public statements. The recording she cited as her evidence, the so-called proof of a violent threat, was not what she claimed it to be. It was a conversation between Wayfarer financier Steve Sowitz and producer Claire, recorded weeks before any harassment complaint had even been filed. When the public first heard about it, Blake's team painted it as a chilling moment, a man making sinister comments about destroying her family. But when the actual recording surfaced, it told an entirely different story. There was no threat, no anger, no mention of Blake at all. It was two frustrated colleagues laughing about the chaos surrounding a movie that had spiraled into a media circus. Sowitz joked about having a rough week juggling budgets and press damage control, and the supposed violent remark was a metaphor about defending the studio from false narratives. Crude perhaps, but not criminal yet. By the time the truth came out, the story had already taken root. Blake had used the illusion of danger to strengthen her own image as the wronged woman fighting the system. And for months it worked. The public rallied around her, journalists repeated her claims, and every article framed Justin Baldoni as the man who let it happen. But while she was speaking loudly, Justin chose silence not as a defense mechanism, but as a strategy. He knew that in Hollywood, perception is currency, and if he spoke too soon, it would be twisted into another weapon against him. So he waited, and so did Wayfarer, letting the documents pile up, letting the evidence grow, and letting Blake's inconsistencies quietly expose themselves over time. Court transcripts revealed that the so-called retaliation she described was chronologically impossible. The recording had taken place before she ever filed her complaint, meaning there was no way it could have been a response to her accusations. Even the judge noted the mismatch in dates, calling the evidence unreliable and out of context. Still, Blake's team fought to keep the audio sealed, claiming it was too sensitive, too private for public ears. But that argument didn't last when the judge ruled that she had voluntarily stepped into the public spotlight by filing her claims. The order was clear. The recording would be unsealed, and once it was, the internet exploded. Reddit users began dissecting every word of it. One anonymous account, known only as Clark Kent, shared the full, uncut version, proving once and for all that the recording had been manipulated through selective edits and misleading quotes. The myth of the threat vanished overnight, replaced by laughter and casual business talk about marketing stress rather than malice. The revelation shocked even those who had supported her, because it wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a calculated spin. A rewriting of reality that exposed just how deep the obsession with control had gone. The fallout was instant. Entertainment sites began quietly updating their old articles. Fans who had once defended her started to question her motives, and for the first time the narrative shifted. Instead of Blake being the victim, people started asking if she had orchestrated the entire thing to protect her brand and redirect blame onto Wayfarer and Justin Baldoni. Industry insiders whispered that the moment the audio went public, Blake's team went into panic mode, trying to manage the crisis before it spiraled further. According to leaked internal messages, they scrambled to book sympathetic interviews to push feel-good photo ops to reset her image. But none of it worked, because the facts were undeniable. The timeline, the audio, the court documents all contradicted her version of events. It wasn't about justice, it was about control. And in the process of trying to control everything she had lost, the one thing she needed most, credibility. And as her narrative began to collapse, the people she had tried to silence began to regain their voices, and none louder than the public itself, who began to see the truth she had worked so hard to hide. As the truth spread across social media, the illusion that Blake Lively had carefully maintained for months began to fracture piece by piece. The audio that was once portrayed as terrifying was now being replayed, analyzed, and laughed at by millions of users on Reddit, TikTok, and YouTube. It wasn't threatening, it wasn't sinister. It was a conversation filled with frustration, exhaustion, and irony. Two people venting about the stress of Hollywood chaos rather than plotting revenge within. Hours, hashtags like Justice for Justin, and the truth tape began trending worldwide. Fans who had once stood firmly in Blake's corner started comparing timelines, examining court filings, and connecting dots that didn't match her public story. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. Her own documents placed the recording before her accusations even existed, and that single fact tore down months of emotional manipulation and media spin. Insiders began to talk not in whispers, but in open frustration. They described how Blake and Ryan had pushed for absolute control over the film's marketing strategy, insisting on specific photo angles, brand tie-ins, and scripted interview responses. The film wasn't supposed to be about their image, but about a story of survival and empathy. Yet it became a marketing platform, a way to push Blake's drink line, her style brand, and her personal identity as Hollywood's untouchable golden girl. But that image was cracking because for the first time, Hollywood insiders were seeing the other side, the side that didn't make it into glossy magazines, the one filled with demands, power plays, and media manipulation. After the court unsealed the audio, the tone in industry circles shifted. Completely, publicists who had once defended her stopped returning calls. Producers who had championed her projects began rethinking future collaborations. One executive was quoted in private emails saying, "If she can rewrite a timeline this easily, what will she do with a contract that doesn't favor her?" Another insider described how several studios began quietly distancing themselves, not out of malice, but out of fear that any project connected to her would become a headline waiting to happen. The fallout wasn't just professional, it was personal too. Fans who had idolized her began questioning everything. The empathy, the vulnerability, the relatable persona, all started to feel like a script carefully rehearsed for years. The online community that had once rushed to protect her now began dissecting her every word, comparing her claims to documented evidence and realizing that many of her earlier statements didn't align with reality. Threads broke down her interviews frame by frame, highlighting moments where she seemed to contradict herself, moments that now looked rehearsed rather than real. And through it all, Justin Baldoni remained silent, steady, and focused. While the world debated his reputation, he refused to fight back publicly. He didn't issue fiery statements or post emotional videos. He simply continued working, producing, and directing, letting the truth find its own way out. That restraint became his strength as the court of public opinion shifted. The very calmness that had once made him seem detached now made him look dignified. Fans began flooding his social media with apologies and support, calling him a man of integrity in an industry driven by ego and noise. Journalists began revisiting his older interviews, realizing that even at the height of the controversy, he never once blamed Blake or spoke negatively about her. Instead, he had consistently shown empathy, emphasizing collaboration and gratitude, and that pattern told the real story, because in a city built on illusion, authenticity stands out more than any performance. The longer Blake's side tried to control the narrative, the more the cracks showed. Leaked emails revealed attempts to pressure journalists to soften, headlines, and even efforts to quietly discredit those who questioned her version of events. But the internet had already turned into its own courtroom. And once the public started investigating, there was no turning back. The truth had momentum, and no amount of spin could stop it. In the end, the truth was louder than any headline. The unsealed audio, the court documents, and the public reaction exposed a story not of victimhood, but of control. Blake Lively's attempt to shape the narrative backfired, turning admiration into doubt, while Justin Baldoni's quiet patience restored his integrity and earned him respect. The feud that once divided Hollywood became a lesson in how truth always finds a way to surface, no matter how deep it's buried, and how in a world obsessed with image, authenticity remains the most powerful force of all.